Introduction to Hollywood's Golden Age. Hollywood's Golden Age, which spanned roughly from the late 1920s to the early 1960s, is one of the most influential periods in the history of cinema. It was a time when Hollywood rose to global dominance, becoming the undisputed center of the film industry. This period marked the emergence of iconic films, legendary stars, and groundbreaking technological innovations that transformed the entertainment world. At the heart of the Golden Age was a combination of technological advancements, the development of a highly controlled studio system, and the growth of an international audience captivated by the magic of the silver screen. The Golden Age of Hollywood was shaped by the booming demand for entertainment in the aftermath of World War I and the Great Depression. During this time, the film industry experienced unprecedented growth, solidifying Hollywood as the cultural capital of cinema. Hollywood. Movies began to cross borders and reach international markets, influencing global entertainment and culture. The combination of larger-than-life productions, glamorous stars, and technological advancements made Hollywood synonymous with the magic of the movies, and its influence extended far beyond the screen into fashion, music, and social trends. The Hollywood Golden Age was also a time of artistic experimentation, where filmmakers pushed the boundaries of storytelling, visual styles, and technical achievements. Innovations in sound, color, and special effects were introduced, and cinematic techniques that are still used today were perfected. However, despite its glamour and success, this period was also marked by strict censorship under the Hays Code, which sought to regulate the content of films and ensure that they adhered to a set of moral standards. The Golden Age thus represents both a period of tremendous creativity and a time of moral constraint, making it a fascinating chapter in film history. The studio system was the foundation upon which Hollywood's Golden Age was built. This system, which dominated the industry from the early 1930s to the 1950s, was characterized by large vertically integrated film studios that controlled every aspect of production, distribution, and exhibition. Major studios like Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM, Warner Brothers, Paramount Pictures, 20th Century Fox, and RKO held monopolistic power over the movie-making process, ensuring their dominance in the industry. These studios were not just producers. They owned the theaters where their films were shown and often controlled the distribution channels, making them gatekeepers of the film industry. Under the studio system, filmmakers, actors, writers, and other creatives were often contracted to a single studio for extended periods, typically with the terms of their contracts heavily favoring the studios. These contracts restricted talent's freedom, with stars being assigned roles according to the studio's needs rather than their personal preferences. Actors like Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, and Clark Gable became synonymous with the studios they worked for, often being typecast in specific roles that matched their screen persona. The studios also created a star system, a marketing tool that propelled the careers of Hollywood's most famous actors. The creation of these larger-than-life personas was not left to chance, as studios actively managed the public images of their stars. Every aspect of an actor's life was carefully controlled, from their on-screen performances to their off-screen relationships. This careful crafting of a star's image made Hollywood a key part of popular culture, as audiences flocked to theaters to see not just a film, but their favorite stars. The studio system helped cement the public's emotional connection to stars, turning them into global icons. While the system created a stable, reliable output of films, it had its drawbacks. The creativity of directors and actors was often stifled by the studio's rigid control. Directors like Alfred Hitchcock and John Ford found ways to express their personal vision within the studio system, but they were the exception rather than the rule. Many filmmakers were restricted by the formulas and genres the studios preferred, leading to a sense of creative uniformity in the films produced during the Golden Age. However, the studio system was remarkably efficient, and its ability to churn out a steady stream of films led to Hollywood's dominance in the global entertainment market. It wasn't until the 1950s that this system began to break down, primarily due to the rise of television and changing social dynamics that gave more power to individual filmmakers and actors. One of the most defining features of Hollywood's Golden Age was the rapid pace of technological advancements that reshaped the film industry and the way audiences experienced cinema. The transition from silent films to sound films, beginning with the groundbreaking success of The Jazz Singer, 1927, marked a dramatic shift in the cinematic landscape. Silent films had dominated the industry for decades, relying on visual, storytelling, and intertitles to convey dialogue and emotions. However, the advent of synchronized sound revolutionized the medium. The Jazz Singer, the first major talkie, featured synchronized dialogue and music, which captivated audiences and made silent films seem outdated almost overnight. This technological leap not only changed how films were made, but also how they were performed, as actors now had to adjust their performances to incorporate dialogue. Following the success of The Jazz Singer, the film industry quickly adopted sound technology, and by the early 1930s, talkies had become the norm, making silent films a thing of the past. This transition was not without its challenges, as it required significant investment in new technology, equipment, and the retraining of personnel. Actors who had been successful in the silent film era now faced a new challenge: adjusting to the demands of spoken dialogue. Some actors, particularly those with less than ideal voices, found themselves relegated to lesser roles or even out of work altogether. Alongside the rise of sound, Technicolor emerged as a groundbreaking technological advancement in the 1930s. Initially, color film was used sparingly due to the expense and technical difficulties involved in producing it. However, by the time of The Wizard of Oz, 1939, and Gone with the Wind, 1939, Technicolor had matured into a stunning cinematic tool, allowing filmmakers to use vibrant, realistic colors to bring stories to life in ways that had never been possible before. The use of color not only enhanced the visual experience of films, but also helped to elevate the emotional and thematic depth of stories. For example, in The Wizard of Oz, the transition from the dull, sepia-toned Kansas to the bright, fantastical world of Oz is an iconic use of color to signal the beginning of Dorothy's adventure. As the 1950s approached, the rise of television threatened the cinema industry, prompting Hollywood to seek new ways to draw audiences into theaters. In response, the industry embraced even more advanced technologies, such as widescreen formats like CinemaScope and VistaVision. These widescreen formats allowed films to be presented in more expansive, panoramic visuals that could not be replicated on the small television screen. The introduction of these formats, along with innovations in 3D films, provided audiences with a more immersive and spectacular cinematic experience, further solidifying the allure of movie theaters in an increasingly television-dominated world. Star system was perhaps one of the most powerful tools Hollywood used to maintain its dominance during the Golden Age. During this time, Hollywood studios didn't just discover and hire talented actors, they meticulously crafted them into larger-than-life figures, whose names were as important to the success of a film as the story itself. Stars were promoted not just for their acting ability, but for their carefully curated public personas. The studios controlled every aspect of a star's career, from their roles and public image to their private lives, creating icons who were instantly recognizable and irreplaceable. Actors like Clark Gable, Ingrid Bergman, Marilyn Monroe, and Humphrey Bogart were not merely performers. They were symbols of glamour, sophistication, or rugged masculinity, depending on the image that the studios sought to project. These stars were cast in films that matched their public image, which was carefully controlled and promoted through magazines, interviews, and publicity stunts. For example, Marilyn Monroe's persona as the vulnerable but alluring blonde bombshell was a product of studio marketing, and her personal life, including her marriages and alleged affairs, was also carefully curated to build her image. Star system had a profound impact on both the films themselves and the movie-going audience. Audiences didn't just go to see a film, they went to see their favorite stars perform. The popularity of a film was often tied directly to the star power of its cast, making the success of a film, at least in part, a reflection of the fame of the actors in it. This phenomenon extended beyond the films themselves, as stars' personal lives were often as publicized and scrutinized as their on-screen performances. The public's obsession with the lives of stars, whether it was Elizabeth Taylor's tumultuous marriage to Richard Burton, or Humphrey Bogart's off-screen persona as a tough, no-nonsense man, became a significant part of the overall Hollywood spectacle. However, the star system was not without its downsides. Actors, though, often incredibly wealthy and famous, were also subject to extreme control by the studios. The rigid structure of the system meant that many actors were typecast into roles that matched their public personas, limiting their ability to showcase a wider range of talent. For example, an actor known for playing a romantic lead might find it difficult to be cast in a dramatic or action role, and vice versa. This typecasting could also lead to frustration among stars who longed for more diverse roles, or who wished to move beyond the image that the studio had created for them. In some cases, actors who broke free from the star system, like James Dean and Marlon Brando, became even more iconic for their rebelliousness and rejection of the rigid system. The golden age of Hollywood saw the development and popularization of several film genres, each of which played a significant role in defining the cinematic landscape of the time. These genres not only reflected the social and cultural concerns of the era, but also served as vehicles for Hollywood to appeal to a wide variety of tastes and demographics. Genres like musicals, film noir, westerns, and epic dramas became staples of Hollywood filmmaking, with each genre contributing to the overall narrative of the Golden Age. Musicals. During the Golden Age, musicals were a major box office draw. Directors like Busby Berkeley and Gene Kelly revolutionized the genre by incorporating elaborate dance routines, elaborate set designs, and vibrant musical numbers. Films like Singin' in the Rain, 1952, considered by many to be the greatest musical of all time, combined romance, comedy, and show-stopping dance sequences. Musicals were often used as a means of escapism during difficult times, offering lighthearted entertainment and colorful visuals. The genre was especially beloved during the Great Depression and World War II, providing audiences with an uplifting diversion from the challenges of the outside world. Film noir, another significant genre that emerged during the Golden Age, was film noir. Characterized by its dark, moody visuals and themes of crime, corruption, and moral ambiguity, film noir reflected the anxieties of post-war America. The genre often dealt with themes of betrayal, femme fatale, and anti-heroes caught in morally complex situations. Films like Double Indemnity, 1944, and The Big Sleep, 1946, depicted a world where the line between good and evil was often blurred, resonating with a society grappling with uncertainty and distrust. The visual style of noir, with its use of shadows, high contrast lighting, and urban settings, became iconic and has influenced films to this day. Westerns. The Western genre, deeply rooted in American mythology, flourished during the Golden Age. Westerns often depicted the clash between civilization and the untamed frontier, focusing on themes of justice, honor, and individualism. Directors like John Ford created sweeping epics such as Stagecoach, 1939, which showcased the grandeur of the American West. Later films like High Noon, 1952, brought more contemporary issues into the genre, reflecting fears about political conformity in the Cold War. Westerns often portrayed the hero as an individual who sought to right wrongs, reflecting a popular ideal of American ruggedness and self-reliance. Epic dramas. Hollywood also excelled in the creation of epic dramas during the Golden Age, often set in historical or mythical contexts. Films like Ben-Hur, 1959, and The Ten Commandments, 1956, used massive sets, elaborate costumes, and large-scale special effects to tell grand, sweeping stories of human conflict and triumph. These epics were designed to be visually spectacular, offering audiences an experience that could not be replicated on the small screen or in other media. The use of scale in these films not only showcased Hollywood's technical capabilities but also highlighted the cultural desire for larger-than-life storytelling during the post-war era. These genres were more than just entertainment. They played a key role in shaping public perceptions of morality, identity, and culture during the Golden Age. Each genre became a reflection of the era's concerns, values, and aspirations, and their influence continues to be felt in modern filmmaking. The Hays Code, formerly known as the Motion Picture Production Code, was a significant force in shaping Hollywood's Golden Age. Instituted in 1930 and fully enforced by 1934, the Hays Code was an attempt to regulate the content of films, ensuring that they adhered to a strict set of moral guidelines. In response to rising concerns about the impact of cinema on public morals, especially during the more liberal 1920s, the film industry self-imposed the code to avoid government censorship. The code was designed to curb depictions of violence, sexuality, and immoral behavior, particularly in response to the increasing popularity of risque films and the growing power of Hollywood in shaping public attitudes. Under the Hays Code, films were required to conform to several moral standards. It prohibited any representation of immoral acts, including adultery, drug use, and blasphemy, and strictly regulated how violence and crime could be depicted on screen. For example, criminals could not be shown as sympathetic figures. They had to be punished by the end of the film to reinforce moral lessons. Furthermore, any romantic relationships had to be presented within the bounds of traditional marriage, and even mild physical intimacy like kissing was subject to strict limits. Censorship was also aimed at preserving the moral integrity of women, with actresses being discouraged from playing loose or overtly sexual roles. While the code helped Hollywood avoid potential legal interference and criticisms from religious and civic groups, it also severely restricted filmmakers' creative freedom. The need to adhere to the code led to a highly sanitized portrayal of life on screen, leaving little room for nuanced or controversial storytelling. However, filmmakers often found creative ways to work around these restrictions. Innuendo, subtle imagery, and double meanings became essential storytelling tools. For example, the use of shadowy lighting and suggestive dialogue allowed directors like Alfred Hitchcock to explore themes of crime, sex, and psychological tension without directly violating the code. Film noir, with its dark themes of crime, betrayal, and moral ambiguity, was particularly adept at using suggestive imagery to convey complex and often controversial subjects. As the 1940s and 1950s progressed, there was growing discontent within the industry about the limitations imposed by the Hays Code. Audiences' attitudes toward morality were shifting, influenced by post-war changes in society, the rise of youth culture, and growing calls for greater freedom of expression. In 1952, the Supreme Court ruled that films were entitled to First Amendment protection, which ultimately undermined the effectiveness of the Hays Code. The increasing public desire for more mature, socially relevant content led to the gradual collapse of the Hays Code in the late 1950s. By 1966, the MPAA film rating system was introduced, which marked the official end of the Hays Code and gave filmmakers more freedom to explore a wider range of themes and subjects. Despite its restrictions, the Hays Code's legacy is still felt in Hollywood today. It shaped the industry's approach to morality and censorship, influencing the portrayal of violence, sexuality, and gender roles in cinema for decades. It also forced filmmakers to develop their creativity, using subtlety and cleverness to navigate moral boundaries while still delivering compelling stories. The end of the Golden Age. The Hollywood began to fade in the late 1950s and early 1960s, marking the end of an era defined by the dominance of the studio system, the star-driven film industry, and the strictures of the Hays Code. Several factors contributed to the decline of this era, with television emerging as one of the most significant threats to the film industry's monopoly on entertainment. By the mid-1950s, television had become a fixture in American homes, offering free entertainment that competed directly with Hollywood's movies. Audiences, particularly younger viewers, were increasingly drawn to the convenience and affordability of television over the expense and formality of going to a movie theater. The rise of television contributed to a shift in the way films were made, as studios began to lose their grip on the entertainment market. Television not only provided a competing form of entertainment, but also made the film industry realize the changing tastes of audiences. The once thriving studio system, with its rigid control over actors, directors, and production, began to crack under the weight of these changing demands. In response to the challenge posed by television, the film industry began to shift its focus toward larger-than-life productions, such as epic films and widescreen spectacles, which could offer an experience that television could not replicate. Films like Ben-Hur, 1959, and The Ten Commandments, 1956, were produced to provide audiences with an experience that was visually and emotionally grander than what they could see on TV. Another contributing factor to the end of the Golden Age was the breakdown of the studio system itself. During the 1950s, antitrust lawsuits and changes in labor laws led to the dissolution of the major studio monopolies. The Paramount decision of 1948, a landmark antitrust ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court, forced Hollywood studios to divest their theater chains, ending their control over the exhibition of films. This decision fragmented the control that the studios had once enjoyed and opened the door for independent filmmakers to rise to prominence. Social changes in the post-World War II era also played a role in the decline of the Golden Age. The 1960s counterculture movement, driven by young people's growing interest in political and social rebellion, ushered in a new wave of cinema that sought to break away from the sanitized, idealized images that dominated Hollywood in the earlier decades. Filmmakers like Stanley Kubrick, Elia Kazan, and Arthur Penn began to explore more controversial, politically charged themes in their films, reflecting the shifting attitudes of society. Movies began to tackle subjects like racial inequality, political corruption, and sexual liberation, themes that were once considered taboo under the Hays Code. The rise of new Hollywood filmmakers, who operated outside the traditional studio system, heralded a new era in filmmaking, one that was more experimental, bold, and socially engaged. By the early 1960s, Hollywood had entered a period of transition. The studio's once infallible model of controlling production, distribution, and exhibition had crumbled, and a new generation of filmmakers took advantage of the changing landscape to tell stories that were more reflective of the complex, evolving world around them. While the Golden Age of Hollywood may have ended, its legacy, shaped by iconic films, stars, and innovations, remains a cornerstone of modern cinema. The transition from the Golden Age to the new Hollywood era marked a shift from an era of polished mainstream entertainment to one that was more inclusive, diverse, and willing to tackle the difficult issues of the day. The legacy of Hollywood's Golden Age continues to resonate in the filmmaking practices and aesthetics of modern cinema. While the studio system and the strictures of the Hays Code have long since faded, many of the foundational aspects of the Golden Age remain ingrained in the structure of contemporary Hollywood. The era's emphasis on star power, larger-than-life, storytelling, and technological innovation laid the groundwork for many of the practices still prevalent in the industry today. One of the most enduring elements of the Golden Age is the continued importance of the star system. Although the rigid studio-controlled system of the 1930s and 1940s has evolved, the concept of celebrity remains a dominant force in the film industry. Actors like Leonardo DiCaprio, Meryl Streep, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson are not just known for their performances, but for their carefully curated public personas, similar to the icons of the Golden Age. The marketing of films often hinges on the appeal of its stars, and the public's relationship with actors continues to be a significant driver of a film's box office performance. Moreover, the Golden Age's emphasis on grand, spectacle-driven filmmaking continues to shape Hollywood's most successful blockbusters. The influence of epic dramas, musicals, and visually stunning films from that era can be seen in today's franchise films and tentpole movies, such as those produced by the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, and Star Wars series. Just as films like Gone with the Wind, 1939, and The Wizard of Oz, 1939, captivated audiences with their scale and color, contemporary films such as Avengers Endgame, 2019, and Avatar, 2009, use cutting-edge technology to create expansive, immersive cinematic experiences that echo the grandeur of the Golden Age. Technological innovations that began during Hollywood's Golden Age, such as sound synchronization and Technicolor, have evolved into the sophisticated filmmaking tools used today. The transition from analog to digital cinematography, along with advancements in CGI, computer-generated imagery, allows filmmakers to create visually spectacular films with an unprecedented level of detail. Modern filmmakers often credit the technical experimentation of directors during the Golden Age, who pioneered the use of visual effects, as a direct precursor to the elaborate digital effects used in today's films. Additionally, The rise of independent cinema in the post-Golden Age period owes much to the breakdown of the studio system, which began to disintegrate in the 1950s. The loosening grip of major Hollywood studios allowed for more experimental, avant-garde films to emerge, which laid the groundwork for the rise of New Hollywood in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Directors like Francis Ford Coppola, Martin Scorsese, and Stanley Kubrick were able to produce films that challenged traditional norms, a trend that continues in independent filmmaking today, with directors having greater freedom to explore a range of social and political themes. Despite the dramatic shifts that have occurred in the industry since the Golden Age, the period's enduring influence on cinema cannot be overstated. The Golden Age's blend of artistic ambition, technological innovation, and mass entertainment continues to inspire filmmakers and audiences alike, ensuring that the period's impact on the cinematic landscape remains a defining feature of Hollywood's legacy. The Golden Age of Hollywood wasn't just a cinematic movement, it was a cultural and social reflection of the era in which it flourished. Throughout the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s, the films produced during this period offered more than just entertainment. They provided a mirror to the political, economic, and societal dynamics of the time. Hollywood reflected the public's desires, dreams, and anxieties, from the Great Depression and the rise of World War II to the complexities of post-war America. During the Great Depression of the 1930s, the public turned to Hollywood films for escapism and relief. With real-world problems overwhelming many Americans, films offered a way to temporarily escape harsh realities. Musicals, comedies, and lavish costume dramas provided a bright, colorful contrast to the everyday struggles of Depression-era life. Movies like The Wizard of Oz, 1939, and Singin' in the Rain, 1952, offered audiences a chance to experience joy, laughter, and an idealized version of the world, where challenges were always overcome and dreams could come true. These films were not only a source of relief, but also a method of preserving hope and optimism during uncertain times. World War II had a profound influence on Hollywood as well, both in terms of content and production. Many films of the era served to support the war effort, such as Casablanca, 1942, which, although a love story, was infused with themes of patriotism, resistance, and sacrifice. The war also led to the rise of propaganda films, which were used to boost morale, encourage enlistment, and rally support for the American cause. Filmmakers and actors, including James Stewart and Clark Gable, enlisted in the military, reinforcing the connection between Hollywood stars and national pride. In the post-war era, Hollywood continued to influence society's view of American ideals such as family, gender roles, and personal identity. Films like It's a Wonderful Life, 1946, and Rebel Without a Cause, 1955, explored complex themes about personal fulfillment, responsibility, and youth rebellion, addressing the tension between individual desires and societal expectations. The image of the American dream, a notion rooted in prosperity, success, and upward mobility, was perpetuated through the stories Hollywood told. Stars like John Wayne and Audrey Hepburn embodied ideals of rugged individualism and graceful femininity, respectively, reinforcing cultural norms while also challenging them in subtle ways. However, the Golden Age also reflected the deep racial and gender inequalities that existed in society. Hollywood's portrayal of racial minorities was often problematic and stereotypical, with African Americans, Asian Americans, and other racial groups largely relegated to supporting roles or negative portrayals. Films rarely addressed the racial tensions and segregation that were prevalent in the United States, leaving these issues largely unspoken in the mainstream narrative. Gender roles also came under scrutiny during the Golden Age. While actresses like Bette Davis and Katharine Hepburn made strides in creating complex, independent characters, the industry as a whole often perpetuated traditional gender norms that confined women to roles of romance, domesticity, and sexual allure. Despite these limitations, the portrayal of women began to evolve during the Golden Age, as actresses slowly gained more agency and their characters became increasingly multifaceted. By the time the Golden Age ended, Hollywood was undergoing significant changes, driven by the rise of television, the breakdown of the studio system, and shifting social values. However, The cultural influence of this period remains pervasive. Even today, films continue to reflect societal issues, political climates, and cultural movements, just as they did in the Golden Age. The Golden Age of Hollywood, though no longer in existence, continues to shape how movies are made, marketed, and consumed, leaving an indelible mark on both the film industry and the cultural fabric of society.